The World Health Organization says Europe is the only region in the world where COVID-19 deaths increased last week. In its latest report, the WHO said further surges in the Americas, Europe and Asia meant new infections were up 6% globally. In Europe, around 60% of people are fully vaccinated, but only about half that number are in Eastern Europe, where governments are struggling with widespread vaccine hesitancy. There have been more protests against the Austrian government's introduction of restrictions on the movement of unvaccinated people. All those aged 12 or over not jabbed can't leave their homes except for essential activities. The country hit a new daily record on Wednesday with more than 14,000 COVID-19 cases reported. The Czech Republic has announced additional measures as new cases hit the highest level to date. A ban stopping unvaccinated people accessing public events and services will start from Monday. Caretaker Prime Minister Andrej Babiš says negative tests will no longer be accepted as permission to enter events and service establishments. Well, let's cross over to our reporter in Brussels, Jack Parrick, who has more on these stories. Jack, you're joining us there from Belgium. What measures are the Belgian government now considering, given that they just introduced new restrictions or reintroduced pandemic restrictions some 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, we know that they're thinking, Tokes, about potentially forcing teleworking again for at least 3 to 4 days of the week. That is something that the consultative committee here in Belgium is looking into, whether that work from home mandate will be brought in on all companies. We also know that they're starting to discuss whether schools and children over the age of 10 in schools should be forced to wear masks throughout their classrooms. The fear here in Belgium is that schools are potentially somewhere where COVID-19 is spreading and then obviously moving into the adult population. One of the big discussions as well is about nightclubs and the nightlife industry here. It appears that the government will not put restrictions on nightlife, as the GEMS committee, which is a group of experts here in Belgium, which has been used to advise the government throughout this. They're calling on the nightlife industry to be shut down again to try and get the case numbers back under control. There's over 10,000 or so per day at the moment here in the country. But what the government is worried about, that will force illegal parties to erupt again, and that will mean that there'll be less safety, whereas in nightclubs they can at least have measures enforced. Local TV here in West Flanders, the West Flanders region of Belgium, has already announced, though, Tokes, that there have been a load of wedding parties already started to be cancelled over concerns that these measures are going to get ever stricter.
Jack, are we any closer to seeing that coordinated action which so many experts were calling for this time last year? And if so, what shape might it take?
Well, it's difficult to see, isn't it? The European Union has really struggled to coordinate on exactly what the measures should be in each member state, and that's because healthcare and these health issues are a member state issue. They control their own health systems in each of the 27 EU countries. As you said in your intro, there's a sort of disparate set of measures that are coming across. Also, when you look, for instance, at Slovakia, which is having around 6,500 cases a day, there's only 45% of people vaccinated there. They're looking into stricter measures. In some areas of Germany, for instance, the Saxony Bundesland, they're talking about 2G rules. So unvaccinated people aren't allowed to access, for instance, non-essential shops. That's being looked at. Germany as a country is looking into is going to be bringing in free COVID-19 testing again to try and get the COVID cases detected, although that will likely push a surge in case numbers being registered. Remember as well, Tokes, when the Netherlands brought in a 3-week partial lockdown, which is seeing nightlife closing at 8 p.m, bars and restaurants, etc., we saw violent protests there, and governments across the EU are quite aware that locking down again is going to be very difficult. And a lot of the countries, really, a lot of the questions on citizens' minds is, what is this going to look like for Christmas? The acute awareness that last Christmas was pretty much locked down fully in most EU countries, and I think that's why the countries are looking now into what they can do partially and temporarily to try and prevent a lockdown that would be extremely unpopular over that festive period.